completing our interview series here at the Cryptocurrency Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. Today we're joined by Beccy and Austin Craig, who are the Life on Bitcoin couple and who are now two months? Mm-hmm. 2 months into their 3-month experiment of living completely on Bitcoin. So how's that going?
It's going better. It's going really well. When we started this out, we thought maybe we were going to be starving and destitute and perpetually frustrated, just trying to get the basics taken care of. But the scenario has played out kind of best case. We were hoping to be able to push the outer limits of what's possible using Bitcoin, and it turns out a lot more is possible than we originally thought. So our basic bare essentials of food, rent, gas, groceries, insurance got taken care of within the first month or so of our experiment, and now we're kind of pushing the outer limits. What else can we do? And it's been interesting to see what works and what doesn't, and why.
So backing up a second, this is a project that I think has a lot of emotion tied into it for a lot of people in the community, because it's one of those things that's viewed as a milestone for legitimacy, a milestone for utility, right? Because what use is a currency, just like a language, if you're the only one that speaks it? So, or the only one that performs commerce in it. So what led you to this project, and why was now the time that it was appropriate to do it?
I have been interested in Bitcoin for a couple years, have been reading about it, been interested in it. I have a chat log with a buddy of mine from 2 years ago where I'm asking him, hey, do you know anything about Bitcoin mining? I want to build a miner. And this is a friend of mine who's much more technically capable, who said, well, good luck, man, because I couldn't figure it out, and maybe you'll make more headway. And I immediately gave up the notion of building a miner at that point, because I said, if my buddy Rob can't do it, there's no chance I'll be able to figure this out. So I just continued to learn about it and to read about it and to really stay quite interested, but not really knowing how to engage with it, how to be involved, because I lack the technical skill. When it spiked, when the value of Bitcoin spiked and we saw that bubble in spring of 2013, my interest kind of rekindled, got a lot hotter, and I thought, I got to do something with this. And in a discussion with a good friend of mine, we kind of had the idea strike, saying, what if you lived on Bitcoin? What if you did it for, kind of a longer period of time, months even? And I was engaged. We were planning on getting married in July, and this whole narrative emerged where, you know what, let's live on Bitcoin. Let's make a documentary film about it. This could be something, this could be really good. There's a solid concept here that we could run with.
Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because of all of those various technical expertise that it ties together, actually tends to have a mostly male audience. And so, Beccy, I'm interested in how this has been from your perspective, and if you think that there's any difference whatsoever being a female in the Bitcoin space relative to being a male.
I think that would depend on the female. I don't know. I'm outnumbered most of the time, and that's fine. I expected that. When Austin and I were dating, he asked me, it was around the time Bitcoin started to get a lot of press, and I think it was when it was spiking up to like the $200 range. Austin said, hey, have you heard of Bitcoin? And I said, no. And so he started telling me about it. And as soon as he started talking about mining Bitcoin, I was like, what? Stop talking. What is this? And it made no sense, and it blew my mind. And so I, from that point on, eased into it a little bit. Kind of would read articles here and there as I saw them kind of pop up in my newsfeed. And then he approached me about this project, and I don't know, I just felt like it seemed an important enough thing that it's something I wanted to learn more about. Learning it really in a hands-on way that's how I tend to live my life. I like baptizing myself by fire, I guess. So I felt like it was an exciting thing to just jump in and learn and try. And if I could do it with Austin by my side, then it was much more navigable.
So conventionally speaking, do you consider yourself early adopters?
I am, which is funny because I'm not terribly technically capable. I am not an engineer or a programmer, so I'm really just diving in and messing things up pretty quickly.
Because it's cool.
Yeah, it's so cool, and I'm somebody who likes to look at the potential of a new product or a platform or a product category or any new system. I say, oh, this could be so many different wonderful things and could solve so many problems. And I understood that about Bitcoin, but really this was the way we could engage with it in a way that I felt like could contribute to what was going on with Bitcoin, and that I could actually bring something to the table and interface with it. My experience and background is in video production and marketing. And so this film, I can't write software, I can't write code, I can't really have a technical discussion with you, but I can talk to people and I can make some video about this, and I can hopefully present us on camera in a way that's palatable and interesting and makes sense. So this was our hope and aim to A, learn about it ourselves, and B, hopefully bring some education to folks who might otherwise not be interested in a technical, cryptographic, security, libertarian, political, socioeconomic, philosophical, complicated issue.
Austin, your background and the way that you sort of carry yourself, not to be that guy, but reminds me a lot of me. I think that it's interesting because the timing that you guys really started thinking hard about this project is pretty similar to the timing that I started this show. And I think that there was a turning point that we hit there where that price went up, and it wasn't that it went up, it was that it went up after the year before. For me at least, it had gone down so much. And it had been so bad and so depressing and everybody thought it was going to be over, but it wasn't. And so the fact that it went up again was like a signal to me, like a blinking beacon saying this is something that is important and that for whatever reason seems to be working. And then I looked at the community and I said, okay, the one major problem that they have here, one of the major problems that I can actually do something about was that the people who are able to explain this aren't able to explain this because yes, they have the technical knowledge, but they aren't able to articulate it in a way that is actually appreciable by people who don't have that technical knowledge. So I mean, it sounds like that was a really similar to your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I had spent, and honestly, this is not just self-deprecating. I really don't understand it on a technical level. If you start talking to me about the blockchain and blocks and hashing, I hear the terminology a lot, but I honestly cannot tell you what all those things mean. I understand it like I understand my television. I grab the remote and I turn it on, and I know how to change channels and change the volume, and I know how to make it record some things if I learn that function. But I can't tell you the physics or the mechanics of it. Bitcoin is the same way, but I understand by virtue of how it operates, there's huge potential here. And that was enough to get me really interested, really excited, and to want to engage with the subject matter. But it's not ever going to take off as a currency. It's not ever going to go anywhere. It's not ever going to become what the potential offers if it doesn't move beyond that niche technical community. And so that is where we hoped to engage. And hopefully people come to the documentary maybe interested to see the story of a young couple struggling in this crazy experiment. But we want people to walk away saying, oh, and now I also happen to understand this complex issue that actually touches on my life in a lot of ways.
You guys did a Kickstarter campaign. You successfully funded. What did you guys wind up with?
Just under $73,000 on Kickstarter.
Okay, and that was to pay for the documentary crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your work is actually paying you now in Bitcoin. Isn't that right, Austin?
Yeah, I do a lot of freelance video work, a fair amount of acting and voiceover, but I have one staple client who's really built my career over the last few years. I'm the spokesperson for this one company. So I'm in their videos, I'm in their commercials, I do voiceovers. And they were very supportive of the project, and after just really some brief discussion, they agreed they would pay in Bitcoin, and they've been wonderful. They've set up a Coinbase account, and that's how they're doing the operation. But it's been really great to, honestly, I have not had to touch US dollars through this experiment, which is wonderful because we had a lot of people really skeptical about what we were doing, saying, oh, they're definitely going to cheat. And I've been surprised how many of our personal friends and acquaintances are like, so be honest, really.
You guys have cheated a couple of times.
You're like spending
right?
money on nights and weekends, right? Like when the cameras are off, we're like, no, we swear we are not using any US dollars. And so the fact that we can do this without ever touching dollars in a lot of ways has been great. Mm-hmm. I've been lucky in that regard. Beccy has a job that's still paying her in US dollars, but that gets converted to Bitcoin right away.
2 months into the project, you guys have conquered a lot of hurdles that were in place. You're able to eat. You're able to do a variety of things. What worked versus what didn't work?
What worked for us really, and what makes me nervous about our upcoming trip, is that we were really able to talk to people about it, especially if we had an existing relationship with them. Not necessarily a friendship, but if I've had an existing professional relationship with somebody, they've been much more interested in hearing what I have to say. Like the guy that does my hair, for instance, is not a guy who would ever consider Bitcoin or be interested in it and its implications, but I've been going to him for several years, so I asked him if he would accept Bitcoin for me in Austin, and he agreed, and I think we've sort of the easiest converts we've had are the people that know us and the people that trust us and the people that are interested in contributing to the community. So kind of the local tie-in is what's been helpful and what's been good for us.
So the people have been a major part of this.
Absolutely, yeah. And what hasn't worked is when we go to any kind of corporate anything. Because they just say, oh, my supervisor's not here, or you'd have to take that up with corporate. And that's just kiss of death. Like, if someone says, oh, you need to talk to our corporate offices, then we just are like, okay, and we don't. Because we can't, and it's not... people aren't ready for it at that level.
Well, there's nothing in it for them, it seems like.
No, not at all.
We've tried to chase it down a couple times where we call corporate offices, and if we finally get through the phone tree and get to a human being, then we explain what we're doing, and that person has no interest in pursuing the conversation, much less considering our proposition.
I get my car insurance through Geico, and so I called them and asked them about it, and the girl was super cool and really helpful. She's like, yeah, this sounds like a really cool thing. She's like, unfortunately, it would have to go to our corporate offices, and to me, corporate is really synonymous with like sluggish movements, and she's like, it would take a year for them to even like talk about it. So, just that environment isn't conducive to like fast adaptation of much.
Whereas when we've walked into mom and pop shops, small operations where the person at the register is also the business owner who has the authority to make that decision, we can have a 5-minute conversation and we'll say, okay, that sounds cool.
And then they can implement it themselves. And I think as more and more of that starts to happen, in a community, if a larger corporation is losing business because mom and pops are taking Bitcoin and customers are starting to pay with Bitcoin, then there's the incentive for that corporation to start taking Bitcoin. But what that means is people need to have it. People need to have Bitcoin wallets and then want to spend it at these places. So that needs to happen before I think we would really see any corporations starting to adopt it.
So now you two are paying for everything in Bitcoin. And so generally when I talk to people about selling things for Bitcoin or buying things for Bitcoin, the concept of a discount for the future value of Bitcoin really often comes into play. So has anyone offered you a discount for paying with Bitcoin, or is it just like, okay, we'll accept this and that is the
sort
improvement?
Of the favor?
Yeah.
Unfortunately we haven't gotten any discounts for accepting Bitcoin. We have had to offer a premium. so really the opposite. Anyone who's not comfortable with it, who doesn't understand it, somehow offering them more of what they don't understand has made them accept it, which is weird, but our landlord, for instance, he was not budging, and he even wanted to, he was like, well, it's just 3 months, like, I'll just have you guys pay me for 3 months when we're done, and we really wanted to pay him in Bitcoin. We really wanted that to be something that happened in this experiment, so we said, well, like, what if we paid you an extra 10%? And then he was like, okay. So it perked right up, but...
he just did not want to be hassled. Accepting Bitcoin meant he had to go through, even if it was a simple step, he had to go through additional steps, setting up a wallet, or in his case, setting up a Coinbase account, which is very simple, but it's just not something that he cared about. It wasn't relevant to him and his business. So we said, listen, it's important to us. It's so important to us. We will pay you additional. We'll mow the lawn even. So now we are mowing the lawn, paying 110% rent. And that was worth it for him to go set up a Coinbase account.
Such a good deal.
And he already had great tenants, so...
Yeah. He got a good deal. He'll realize that one day. What I'm really hoping is, because like some of these people, we went to the farmer's market in Salt Lake and bought some just various things with Bitcoin, and what I really would love, and I don't think we would ever hear back from these people, but I would love it if like the guy we bought ice cream from checked it one day 5 years from now and was like, what?
Yeah.
I just made like $100 and something on one ice cream cone. I think
that I sold 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think that would be really funny. It's quite
fairly likely to happen because
Yeah.
we're trying to pay people. With Coinbase, it's really easy to walk up to somebody and say, hey, I'm going to send you money online. What's your email address?
Yeah.
They'll get the notification that funds have been sent their way. And if they don't immediately convert that to US dollars, it'll stay there and continue to accrue value as Bitcoin rises. So not unlikely that scenario can play out where years from now or even months from now, somebody looks at it and it's gained value and they realize, hey, wait a second, this might be something I could be interested in.
So is that the common method that you've been approaching people with, was Coinbase accounts? Because I had thought that you guys were BitPay integrators.
We've had some businesses, the food truck that we have been eating a lot at, they integrated BitPay.
Okay.
Some of the other, and my hairstylist as well integrated BitPay. So
and Black Sheep Cafe is another place that we've gone to. Businesses that we're going to be returning to, they're going to have an ongoing account that we want them to be able to continue to accept Bitcoin on an ongoing basis, and they understand that. We say, listen, one of these processors that you can go to is BitPay. Here's how to do it. It's very simple. We'll come back in a couple days and walk you through it.
Yeah.
Coinbase we used especially for a one-on-one transaction with somebody who hasn't previously heard of Bitcoin, dealt with it, and we really need to pay them right then.
Yeah.
That's an easy way to say, I'm going to send you money online.
There is lead time with BitPay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I said when I was working with the dentist. I just had my teeth. I just had a couple cavities fixed right before we came. So as I was explaining Bitcoin to him and how he could take payments, I was like, really, there's one of two ways. Like, I feel like Coinbase is easy to start with. There's ease of use there, and it's a quick setup, but it takes time to have the Bitcoins, converted to US dollars. Like, so it would take him, it's going to take you a few days to get Bitcoin to US dollars. BitPay, that process is a little more instant, but the beginning of it is a little longer, so I kind of explained to him that give and take and said, like, BitPay is going to take a few days to set up, but then the conversion will be instant. Coinbase, the setup is instant, and then the conversion's not as quick. So it kind of just depends on the person and what we need to do, what they need to do.
One of the things I wondered is, have you had any contacts with people who take the other side of the coin, right? So you guys are going around convincing people to accept Bitcoin, but you have the same problem of those Bitcoins not being easily convertible back to dollars for people who want. So have you talked to anybody or worked with anybody locally who is willing to buy Bitcoins from these merchants that you're giving Bitcoins to, so that you can simplify that?
One thing that we did is we did a BitMob a week or two ago, where this one restaurant agreed to accept Bitcoin. They were wonderful. We walked in and pitched the idea to them, and they immediately were like, oh yeah, we've been thinking about accepting Bitcoin. We've been reading a lot about it. We were probably going to go with BitPay. And it's like, good heavens, you're light years ahead of everybody else. Mm-hmm. But they set it up, and we came back a week later with a couple dozen local Bitcoin enthusiasts. We all paid in Bitcoin. And I feel like that kind of activity is going to drive it forward, because if literally we're the only ones paying in Bitcoin, it's not going to be anything of interest to local merchants.
Right.
So we've been focusing on getting merchants to accept it, but we also need to start driving forward actual community usage.
Do you think that BitMobs are a good way to accomplish that goal?
Absolutely.
Totally.
I think it's a fantastic idea, because it's something you can do in your own community without having formal organization, without having... It's something that everybody can contribute to in a meaningful way just by buying dinner.
Yeah.
It'll be fun. It actually is effective. There's no drawbacks, I feel like, to the BitMob.
Bitcoin meetups are happening all over the place. Wherever there's a Bitcoin community, there are Bitcoin meetups. So why not meet up at a restaurant and then put those Bitcoins to use and get them into your local economy? It makes total sense.
So far, again, putting you on the spot here, what do you think is the oddest experience you've had in this journey?
We've had a couple. On our first day, when we got back from our honeymoon, so we started when we landed in Salt Lake International Airport back from our honeymoon, and we tried to convince a cab. No cabs were interested. We went to the train station and convinced one guy to accept half Bitcoin Casacious coin in exchange for buying our train fare back from the airport. And on the train, we started calling cab companies to take us from the train station to our house. And some of them were not interested in talking. Some of them were intrigued. One person who answered the phone at this cab company started reprimanding me, saying what do you mean you don't have credit cards? And no cash? How do you expect to pay people? Oh, you're going to pay with internet money that people have never heard of. That doesn't sound very wise, does it? It was suddenly I had called up my disappointed grandmother, telling me that I needed to live more responsibly. It was a really odd conversation to be having, and I was like, I understand, thank you for the advice. Can we get a cab? Will that work for you? It's also been funny sometimes when we approach people, you think that Bitcoin has a type, but I have been really surprised sometimes about who knows what it is and who has no idea. This little old lady at a local grocery store said, oh yeah, I know what Bitcoin is. And I didn't believe her at first. I thought she must be confused.
No, you're confused, man.
We are not PayPal, ma'am. We're talking about Bitcoin. She's like, I know what Bitcoin is. I was like, oh, okay. And she wasn't kidding. She explained it to me. She really did understand what Bitcoin was. So there's been not huge game changers, but just those kinds of interactions are really intriguing to me, really eye-opening that people of all kinds can interact with this, and it's interesting to see the different takes that people have on Bitcoin, because the opinions are just as diverse as the number of different people you talk to.
For me, the weirdness has come when anytime we interact publicly, like on Facebook or with our friends, it surprised me how many people think the joke of, oh, well, can you pay for that in Bitcoin is funny. Because it's not funny anymore, and we hear it every day now.
Yeah, we've been hearing that every day for months.
If we had a Bitcoin for every person that said that.
Can you pay for it with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
First time I've heard that one.
Yeah.
So, looking forward here, so you're on month 2 of a 3-month experiment. You guys are getting ready for a trip out of the country.
Yeah.
And away from the warmth of locals who you know, and moving into so what does that trip look like, and what are you hoping to accomplish with it?
That trip is looking scary.
Yeah, I started to have a mild panic attack when I really started thinking about the trip. But what that trip is looking like to me is an opportunity to really interact with people that we don't know and that aren't from our community. People in the Bitcoin community, people that have no idea what it is, really interacting with them about what we're doing and why, and introducing people to Bitcoin. I want to be in Kansas and at a gas station and talking to somebody like, this is what Bitcoin is, explaining it as best as we can while trying to get gas,
It'll be, I think, the most intriguing part of the documentary. Time-wise, it's just it's less than 1/3 of our entire life on Bitcoin, but I think for the purposes of the documentary, there's going to be a lot of on-camera time here from the trip, because that's where real interesting exchanges are going to happen. In our own community, we have kind of the protection of an environment that we're familiar with, people who are familiar with us, trusted relationships, a knowledge of which establishments are more likely than others to accept Bitcoin. With the trip that we're taking, we're not going to be in one place for much longer than a couple days at any point. So it's going to be, what can we accomplish right here on the spot? What's going to be the most effective way to get what we need and to evangelize Bitcoin? Because that's how we're going to survive. We're planning as much ahead of time as we think is necessary for us to not starve or be absolutely destitute. Because
for instance, we're bringing a tent.
Yeah. And if we miss a flight, I have no idea what plan B is. So if we somehow don't make it to the airport on time to get to Stockholm from New York, I don't know how we make up for that, but there's enough planning ahead that we know we can hit those critical junctures, but we're leaving a lot of it open so that we can just continue to have these kind of serendipitous interactions.
So what does the itinerary look like? Which countries are you going to, and why did you pick those?
The places we chose are places that reached out to us. So we said in our Kickstarter video that we wanted to see if we could do a cross-country road trip. So we're driving across the country. We're starting out in Utah, driving to New York. New York has a lot of Bitcoin activity there, and it's literally across the country. So driving to New York and then flying to Stockholm, Sweden. Stockholm is home to KNC Miner, one of the companies that's making these new ASIC miners, and KNC reached out to us during crowdfunding, and they were really excited about what we were doing. They've actually been a huge support to the project. Honestly, I don't think a lot of our video production would be possible without their support. But we're going out there to see their operation and to hear their story, because from what I can gather, they have a pretty fascinating story about how they pulled all this together to make these miners in such a short amount of time. From there, we're flying to Berlin, going to the Kreuzberg neighborhood, where there's a lot of Bitcoin activity there as well, discussing how that developed and what they foresee with Bitcoin, and then flying to Singapore. Singapore is a global financial hub. We had people from the community there reach out to us saying, come to Singapore, see what investment bankers think of Bitcoin. That also gives us the opportunity to finish our trip by literally going around the globe, by flying back home to Provo, Utah, and having circled the globe on Bitcoin, which, I'm a marketer, that's a pretty good headline. It's a pretty good hook. And that's honestly, we want to see how far we can take Bitcoin. I don't know how much further we could go. We've literally, at that point, fingers crossed, hoping that we get there, we will have circled the globe, showing that a lot more is possible with Bitcoin than we might have originally imagined.
So how did you wind up solving, you mentioned that some of the toughest ones to solve were the corporate ones, and that mostly you just weren't able to get through that wall. Did you wind up partnering with a travel agency, or how did the planes happen?
The planes were tricky. We reached out to a handful of places, but the way it ended up working is we have worked with Simply Travel Online, a company out of Germany that was considering accepting Bitcoin, heard about our project, got in touch with us and said, hey, listen, I've been thinking about it. Let's accept Bitcoin, and you guys can be our first purchase. So they've set up their site now to accept Bitcoin, and if you go to simplytravelonline.com, You can book a hotel. I think they have over 300,000 hotels available through their network, payable in Bitcoin that they'll take care of. So we're getting flights through them. And are we booking hotels? I don't think we're booking a lot of hotels.
We're booking hotels through Simply Travel and through 9 Flats.
That's right. We're doing Simply Travel and 9 Flats. These companies, 9 Flats is kind of an Airbnb competitor. They already accepted Bitcoin. When we started this, it wasn't even in kind of partnership or collaboration. We didn't have to do outreach there. That was just available. So it's been interesting to explore what was already available and what was kind of on the cusp, and can we bring you along and help you get over the edge on this one and start accepting Bitcoin.
So you guys are headed out. When is the road trip to New York start?
In 6 days.
In 6 days. So you're flying back from Atlanta.
That makes me want to cry.
Driving to New York.
Cry. Yeah, driving to New York.
Okay. The ultimate end product here, besides the social experiment you're obviously conducting, is going to be this feature-length film, right? Mm-hmm. So is it going to see any sort of release, or is this going to be a release onto the internet sort of thing, or what's the plan?
Ultimately, it will certainly be available on the internet. I don't think it would be it wouldn't be in the spirit of the project if it was like only available in theaters and DVD. Like, it makes sense for us to put it online. It makes sense for us to have it available in Bitcoin. But we also want this project to reach as many people as possible, not just the Bitcoin community. Obviously, we want it to appeal there, and people in the Bitcoin community will see it, be interested, and probably check out the film. I'm a fan of Bitcoin. I really like Bitcoin. Even as difficult as the project has been at times, I think it's really interesting and has such huge potential. That opinion has not changed, and I want more and more people to learn about it. I feel like the way that can happen is by mainstream distribution. We want to get it, hopefully, to a theatrical release. We're going to try to take it to some film festivals. All the details here are still being worked out because we're still in primary production and filming on the film, but looking at film festivals, looking at theatrical release if we can, and then Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, iTunes, etc.
I guess there are more venues for distribution now than there certainly were a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that we're going to get it out into the whole of the world one way or another. It's not going to be a niche thing.
Well, my suggestion to you is when you do release it on YouTube or some other free media, make sure that you put a QR code that has the Bitcoin address embedded right there on the video, because that definitely is something that could work, especially with a feature-length thing. I think that if you giving something away like that really has value, I think that would be a very interesting experiment. I'd be interested to hear how that goes. So when should we expect to be able to see this? I mean, I understand that it's still in production, but do you have a timeline?
Fingers crossed. We hope to have some form of distribution, be that theatrical or online. We want the film to be done by next spring, maybe late next spring. The film festival circuit is going to be tricky for us. This is, I've worked in video production, but this is the first feature-length film that we've worked on. So that was not something we had scheduled out and really couldn't have changed the schedule for, because we were already planning on getting married. This is going to be the first 90 days of our post-honeymoon married life. So the timing was not changing on that. So there might be a delay in release because of the film festival circuit, but we're hoping to have the film finished, cut, done by late next spring, and maybe we'll be distributing right away at that point. But schedule is still very fluid.
Well, Beccy and Austin, I think that I didn't really know what to expect from this interview, because again, it's like a, I don't know. I was fairly skeptical about it at first too, and I didn't think that there was too much to talk about, but you guys are really doing some interesting work. I think that this is a really interesting exercise, and I think it's very important that that this be done, and that's interesting because again, I didn't really think that was true maybe 2 months ago. So congratulations on your marriage, congratulations on your project. I really look forward to seeing the end result.
Thank you.
Have a good luck in Europe.
we might need the luck, yeah. So thank you, Adam. We really appreciate it.
So that's all we have time for on this episode of Let's Talk Bitcoin. We'll catch you next time.
EasyDNS is the Swiss Army knife for your domain names, helping meet their customers' individual needs since 1998. EasyDNS has been an outspoken critic of SOPA and CISPA. EasyDNS was an early supporter of Bitcoin, and now they are proud to sponsor this show. Do business with a company that shares your values. Get a 13% discount when you pay with Bitcoin. Go to bitcoin.easydns.com and be sure to use discount code LTB. Hi, Stephanie here. Would you like to turn your book into an enthralling audiobook? Need a persuasive commercial to promote your company? How about a narrator for your explainer video? Here's where I can help. I'm a freelance voiceover artist, and since 2009, I've lent my voice to dozens of audio projects. To hear some examples of my work, check out my website, smvoice.info. If you like what you hear, I'd love to be the voice of your next project. Get in touch at smvoice.info.